Cultural interfacing is a term I've come across as a technical writer when I've worked with companies that structure businesses and their internet or internal IT capabilities to translate into different global markets. It's a term that can also be used in communications to refer to strategies for contextualizing language to adapt translations from one culture to another, or in manufacturing to refer to ways of making appliances, for example, work in different countries. But today I'm not talking about internationalized programming languages or translation consultants or voltage adapters. I'm talking about empathy, about trying to suspend judgment about others long enough to imagine, based on limited knowledge, what they might be going through given their context. In fiction, empathy is the baseline and adaptive strategy that allows us to look at, to write about, and to open a dialogue between different cultures.
Important update. Weeks before delivering this presentation in 2007, Martin Nakata's Disciplining the Savages, Savages the Disciplines of 2007 was released in Australia. Years later, I found this in his 2007 paper, The Cultural Interface. He provides a brilliant definition for the cultural interface as a multi-layered and multidimensional space of dynamic relations constituted by the intersections of time, place, distance, different systems of thought, competing and contesting discourses within and between different knowledge traditions, and different systems of social, economic, and political organization. It is a space for many shifting and complex intersections between different people with different histories, experiences, languages, agendas, aspirations, and responses. All these elements cohere together at the interface in the everyday. And back to the presentation for a moment.
In the past, a lot has been said and written to counteract the culturally devastating effects of cultural appropriation. And rightly so. When the dominant or privileged culture has a greater opportunity to define, artistically or otherwise, a minority culture, it rewrites its history and undermines its cultural identity.
The irony isn't lost on me that my use of cultural interfacing would appear to be a sort of hijacking, definitely an appropriation, within a presentation about the harmful effects of cultural appropriation. This calls for a moment of self-reflexivity, which is equally important to decolonizing one's own writing practice. At the time, I was a technical writer and editor, writing system instructions and other manuals. I wish I had come across Nakata's work before the presentation because I love how he frames the term. And I think it would have been valuable information, not just to myself, but to the audience at a BYU reading of my novel. While I use the term broadly as essential to one's writing practice, obviously what he has to say is highly relevant to the conversation, and I have to add, far more articulate than my own, and I have to share. Nakata engages the concept as the place where non-Indigenous histories, orders, and knowledges meet, overlap, and intertwine with Indigenous histories, orders, and knowledges. He highlights that this interface is not merely a passive border or a simple overlap of two distinct worlds, but a contested knowledge space where Indigenous people continuously navigate contradictory discourses, power dynamics, and evolving social relations. I'm going to return to this excerpt from my presentation for a few more words.
A great deal more literature about Native America has been published by non-Native Americans, so the Native community is rightly upset. Many white writers, recognizing this modern-day form of colonialism, avoid writing about other culture. But isolationism doesn't strike me as an answer either. Misunderstandings about cultures are all over, creating a backdrop of ignorance and tension that at times seems insurmountable, and nobody benefits. Business has been the first to overcome cultural isolation, and in business, it all comes down to money. Globalization is profitable. A US-based company can hire brilliant scientists from India or China to create marketable solutions at competitive prices, right? That's what we're all hearing a frenzy about in the news. But of course, I'm not here to talk about profit margins either. I'm talking about using art as a way for cultures to interface without offending one another with cultural appropriation, by taking a look at one another's culture from the outside in, rather than taking the position that it's possible to write from inside the other's body of meaning and signification, using empathy and honesty as the baseline for cross-cultural understanding, which it goes without saying stands to enrich our lives. Writing from the outside in might mean making a number of artistic choices. It might mean not using the first person when writing a character from another culture. It might mean not assuming the intentions or the emotions of the other, but instead reporting the surface detail, the texture that's apparent to the outside world, and acknowledging what the narrator doesn't know, as well as what the narrator does know. It might mean pulling back from omniscience or from complete specificity and delivering instead some of the alienation you feel when you're shopping in a market in a foreign country. I was in Japan and there are all these sale bins, and I would pick up the pieces and wonder what they were. I could see what color they were, I could tell you what sound they make, but I don't know if it's a toy, is this a kitchen utensil, what is this? And that remarkable feeling of discovery is something that's valuable. Specificity isn't always the most valuable tool that we have at our disposal as writers. By speaking against appropriation, I'm not advocating censorship, but if your hope is real communication, real dialogue and interaction, you might look at the project as a computer programmer might. You've got to recognize certain protocols, certain universal code or languages. In the literary landscape that I'd like to imagine, you've got to begin with some medium for cohesion and context, and empathy isn't a bad medium to start with.